Welcome everyone to another MassMEDIC Town Hall. It is really great to see everyone. I know it's actually been a little while since we've done one of our virtual town halls. Took a little bit of a break for the summer from hardcore programming, but are super thrilled to be back with all of you and have another exciting program, and are really glad to have all of you joining us. My name is Rachel Robinson. I'm the Vice President at MassMEDIC, and just again, continue to be thrilled about all the opportunity to spend time with you and get to know all of you so much more. So before I turn things over to Brian, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our speakers. We have an excellent program with Vicarious Surgical and CoreMap today. I know you're going to learn a lot and be really inspired. Just a few little housekeeping notes. If you are not speaking, please be sure to mute yourself. We want to make sure we limit background noise, and we highly encourage questions. So if you do have questions, there is a chat option at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free throughout the presentations to be popping your questions in there, and then Brian and I will do some moderated Q&A after each presenter so we get your questions answered. But really hoping to have a wonderful discussion. And Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rachel, and thanks for joining us from parts unknown. That is not a virtual background, so if you're attacked by a bird or a black bear, it's all real.
If you see a bee and me start running, then it's legit.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us again. God, we've missed you guys. We held a town hall every week for, about 3 months, 3.5 months, and we felt that perhaps you guys might get a little tired of our faces, so. We took a break, but this sort of officially marks the beginning of a really busy fall season of virtual events for MassMEDIC. We're going to be continuing to bring you really excellent boutique programming for the rest of the fall and through 2021. So if you do have any interest in supporting these programs, I think they're some of the best that we've ever done this upcoming slate. Please let us know, because your support helps us continue to keep the lights on, so to speak. And I just, before we jump into the speaker presentations, I kind of wanted to just take a second here because Matthew Boyd is on the line with us here, and Matt and his team at Boyd have put together a really great documentary called Project Frontline. And we're having a premiere of it next week. Matt, do you want to jump on here and just give us a little tease?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. I'll put a link in the chat for everyone. But Brian's one of the stars of our docu-series that we've been filming, really about the emergency response to COVID here in Massachusetts. So we're really excited about it. We've got a live event where we're going to watch the first episode next Wednesday, and then have a panel event with Brian and a number of other participants in the documentary are part of. So I'll put it in the chat now, and certainly happy to follow up with anyone if they have questions. But thanks, Brian.
Absolutely, thank you, Matt. And I just watched the preview today. It was really really exciting and kind of heartbreaking and scary. And we'll bring you back to that. Tell that fresh anxiety of March and April. I know everyone wants to return to that moment, but these are, one of the things that said in the preview that I love, which is, just talking about innovation in a crisis. And I think it's a really good topic that we can delve, because there's so many long-term lessons here in COVID, and obviously we're still dealing with it, but it's important to always kind of be mindful of where you're at. So before we start the speakers, I just wanted to just put a little bug in your ear here. I saw an article last week and talked about fundings in Boston, in the Boston area, and it said that companies in the Boston area raised $1.3 billion in August, which is a remarkable story when you consider the state of our environment, the state of our world, basically, at the time. And I think it's a real testament to how strong our innovation economy is in Massachusetts. It was with these thoughts in mind that we put together this panel. We want to continue to bring to you companies that we have either worked with or getting to know that are pushing the envelope in terms of medtech and are really the vanguard of the next generation of companies to come out of New England. So I'm very excited today to have with us Vicarious Surgical, which is here in the Boston area, and then CoreMap, which is actually out of the great state of Vermont. And it's technology that comes out of UVM. I think both these companies are going to show you some really unique ways in which the next generation of medtech entrepreneurs thinking about this industry and how they're innovating it from the inside and from the outside. So I'm just delighted to hear these presentations. And Rachel, why don't we get started?
Absolutely. And I'm not going to, waste any time turning it over to Adam Sachs, who's the CEO of Vicarious Surgical. And we'd love to hear what you have to say. Adam, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting me. I am so excited to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Just not awesome. I see a million nods. Fantastic. So yeah, this is a new one for me and probably a lot of us, giving a talk over Zoom. I'm sure everyone's heard that a lot, but so let's see how this goes. So yeah, I'm Adam Sachs. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Vicarious Surgical. The Vicarious Surgical, we are shrinking down surgeons and beaming them into patients using a variety of technologies, everything from a few specific consumer technologies combined with our own design of surgical robotics. Also, we are a startup. There's only going to be so much I can show, but I'll show as much as I can in about 7 minutes and try to take all of you through the vision. And yeah, obviously feel free to enter questions. I think when I go full screen on the presentation, I won't be able to see the chat, but I assume if you guys just pull them together and ask me afterward, it'll work out. So give me just a sec to screen share. All right. So yeah, I mean, we've been around for a few years now. We actually invented this, the original core technology here. And since then, we've proven it out in a number of pretty amazing ways, raised $45 million from some incredible investors, and including Khosla Ventures and Bill Gates's venture fund, and hired a team that I'm incredibly proud of. We have a team that spans across robotics, medical devices, including surgical robotics, rehab robotics, and just general medical device expertise. And it's really been the merging of that robotics expertise with device expertise that it's allowed us to do what we're doing and to do something pretty different. So I just wanted to start off with this because especially right now, I'm incredibly proud of our team. They're many of them are hard at work even today in the office and have been for many of the last few months, and allowed us to continue having incredible progress through a really difficult time. So before I dive into the details of what we're doing, I'm going to give an overview that many of you probably already know. So surgery as we know it has been performed for a long time. Really, as we know it, it's been over a century with surgeons making large incisions, performing open operations. It's an incredibly capable way of performing a procedure, but the incision itself actually causes most of the injury to the patient. So these surgeries, these open procedures are life-saving for the patients, but they're also life-altering, with as much as a quarter of laparotomy patients ending up having a ventral hernia that then needs to be repaired. Lots of pain, other complications as well from these procedures. So, while they are truly life-saving, they have a lot of drawbacks. And obviously, everybody is familiar with laparoscopy, with minimally invasive surgery. Minimally invasive surgery is incredible because it offers surgeons the ability to operate with much less injury to the patient. But everything from laparoscopy, including robotic surgery of today, it all has many drawbacks. The abdominal wall is now left intact. That's really what allows the surgeon to operate with less injury, but also prevents the surgeon from operating with the same capability that they have in open surgery. The abdominal wall stays in the way. And that's true whether the surgeon is holding the instruments or whether one of today's robots is holding the instruments. So the result is a challenging procedure where the surgeon needs to spend a lot of time, effort, thought, planning out where they put these incisions so that the pivoting, the fulcrum around the abdominal wall And then the motion triangulated inside of the insufflated abdomen is as good as it could possibly be given the operating site. And multi-quadrant surgery becomes even more difficult, with surgeons often needing to make more incisions, with robotics today needing to double dock, where they insert through additional incisions, often on the other side of the table. The complications for the surgeon are really high, even if they're much lower for the patient, and the whole capability is much lower. So with all of this technology, of course, the question is, what do we have for surgery today? And for the most part, it's open surgery. Even with abdominal surgery today worldwide, it's still over half open. It's almost half open in the United States. About 4 million open abdominal surgical procedures performed in the US alone every single year. And this isn't because surgeons don't care, because they don't want to perform minimally invasive surgery. It's because every one of the tools that we've created that is less invasive is also less capable. Everything from laparoscopy, multi-port robotics, single incision robotics that exist today, they all go down as you decrease the invasiveness to the patient and the injury to the patient, you decrease the capability as well. So of course, we need to fix this. This isn't for surgeons to fix, this is for us to fix. We need to offer surgeons a way to operate that's minimally invasive and more capable than what they have with today's open surgical techniques. Of course, that leads us to what we're doing. So we start with a single incision device. Now, single incision has been tried many times before by a number of different companies, including a lot of brilliant engineers, but it's been encumbered by a few things in particular. First, the size of the incision. So with today's single incision technologies, they're anywhere from 25, 27.5, even 35 for one in particular millimeters, which significantly decreases their utility and decreases their benefit to patient outcome. Our system is 18 millimeters today. We're moving towards 15 millimeters for the entire platform, 2 arms and a camera. Today's systems are also very restricted. They're very limiting. And because of that, it's really important that future solutions are truly freeing and unrestricted for the surgeon. And this is actually one of the things that single incision enables. So with multi-incision, you need to plan where those trocars go and triangulate between the incision sites. With single incision, you can just insert the robot and operate anywhere. And what really enables that is our system, which has 9 degrees of freedom per arm, truly mimicking the human arm motion, including the elbows, so that you can reach down, put your elbows down and reach up, or put your elbows up and reach down, and including the shoulders. This is 2 more degrees of freedom than anyone else. So we actually have the ability to face side to side. Our system can even work and sew around the incision site. And that level of freedom allows a surgeon, it's what comes with single incision, allowing a surgeon to put the device in anywhere in the abdomen and operate anywhere in the abdomen, facing in any direction. The system is as efficient as possible, and this is incredibly important. It's fast, portable, easy to set up, and cost effective. The learning is, the entire learning curve is very easy. We integrate with virtual reality here, allowing the surgeon to look around and see naturally as if they're inside the abdominal cavity. And this means that they don't need to learn how to use clutch pedals to look around. They can just see as if they're there. The arms work like their own arms. It really feels like they've been beamed inside of the patient. And finally, our system is intelligent. We have a level of sensing. We sense every force and every motion from inside the abdominal cavity with encoders and force sensors on the joints. We have full 3D depth mapping, multi-spectrum ability as well. Our system overall has the ability to collect data and then use it in order to improve the safety and efficacy of procedures. So of course, it's not just animation. This is the only video I've actually put in here of the real robot. It's the very first robot that we ever had working from 6 years ago now. My hair was considerably longer. And I mean, it really works. We've invented a new way of doing robotic technology that really enables single incision robotics in a way that's high force, high accuracy, and it's not a flexible robot. It actually has discrete joints that are articulating like the human arm. So this core technology is really what enables our system to be single incision, unrestricted, efficient, and easy. It has become our advanced hardware platform that we are incredibly proud to have received a breakthrough designation from the FDA for. The FDA has reviewed the device. We've shown them cadaver data of the full latest version working, and as a result, they've awarded us a breakthrough designation. And then finally, our system we build on top of this hardware platform, starting with connectivity and networking, which, one of the most frequent questions I get is about remote surgery and how we are going to enable remote surgery. And it's a really interesting question, although I usually caveat it by saying, I think remote training is where the real value is. Remote proctoring, remote assistance. It's not one surgeon here in Boston operating on a patient in a developing country. It's that surgeon proctoring live and teaching them how to operate. And with connectivity and networking, plus a low capital cost system, we are enabling that. And of course, we collect data the whole way, which allows us to use AI techniques like machine learning. We're starting by building out guardrails around what the surgeon does in order to make the procedures safer. And this whole system together is our hardware and software platform. It adds intelligence to the hardware platform, enabling surgeons to perform more complex procedures with less training and really expanding on the capability of what they're able to do. So with that, I will turn it over to, are we doing a short Q&A now?
Yeah, no, I think we have a couple questions that came in from the chat. So I'd love to spend a couple minutes before we move on. Let's do some questions directly. So any plan on using magnetic actuation for minimally invasive procedures?
It's not something that we're doing today. We do use magnets for a variety of things across our robot, including position sensing. But the actual actuation, so one of the big challenges of single incision surgical robots on top of the size is the force that they can exert. Because the abdominal organs are heavy, especially the liver and a fibrous uterus for hysterectomy. And because of that, we use cable-driven actuators, but a significantly different type. And we do that entirely because of the incredible forces that they're able to generate.
With the Oculus type vision system, does that restrict a surgeon's communication with his team as verbal is only available?
I mean, in general, it has some level of restriction. The way I usually describe it is we effectively pull the surgeon out of the operating room and put them inside of the patient, which does have its drawbacks. We also offer a 3D screen for the surgeon to use. So the parts of the procedure that are really intense where the surgeon needs to focus in, we see that surgeons prefer to use the VR aspect. And then the parts that require a ton of communication and coordination within the operating room, surgeons use the 3D screen, and they have both available to them.
So just to follow up, how has the reaction been from surgeons, right? Are you getting a lot of positive feedback? Is there definitely some hesitation, a little fear? I would imagine it's hard to get anyone to adopt something that is completely new. But if you're giving them the opportunity to continue and enhance the procedures that they typically do, how's the reaction been?
Yeah, so I mean, first, we're not on the market yet, but we are, of course, bringing tons of surgeons in and gaining feedback from dozens of surgeons. The feedback has been incredible. Across from, non-robotic adopters through heavy robotics users, we've had some of the most incredible feedback I've ever seen. It's surgeons absolutely love it. They're really excited about it. I would say surgeons are a class of physicians that do not have that hesitancy. Surgeons love toys and very much appreciate new technology. So.
Cool. So what clinical outcome improvement measures are you guys focusing on?
Yeah, it depends on the specific procedure. It's, a lot of them are less about error rates as much as the ability to improve, the ability to perform already proven techniques with minimally invasive surgery. So, across multiple different procedures, there are techniques where there's a technique that results in fewer complications and better outcomes, except for the complications associated with the open surgery that's required in order to perform that technique. So, and this is really what won us the breakthrough designation, was that we were able to show that we are able to do techniques with proven better outcomes through minimally invasive surgery where they've been almost impossible in the past. So that tends to be where we focus rather than decreasing error rates. It's enabling already proven improved clinical, better clinical outcomes.
What do you envision using virtual reality on only for, do you envision using virtual reality only for training or also during surgical procedures?
No, absolutely during surgical procedures. I think that's where it has the biggest advantage. We do use it for training, of course, but I mean, the real beauty of the system is that you feel like you're inside of the patient, which is kind of weird, especially during, cadaver procedures. You're kind of just sitting there next to the the organs or on top of the organs. It's a pretty amazing experience. As a non-surgeon, it's interesting because I'm fully aware and have total understanding of my surroundings in a way that, when I with laparoscopic instruments, I'm a bumbling fool.
Okay, so I'm getting a couple questions from folks about your fundraising journey, and I know that's a long-winded topic, but would love to kind of hear your experiences with that. Obviously, you've had a great amount of success, some continued rounds, and people continuing to show interest. So obviously, you're hitting milestones, showing improvement, showing the potential. But how would you categorize the journey so far?
Well, it's pretty open-ended. Which side of it in particular? I mean, the beginning, I'll say the hardest parts around fundraising were proof of concept, and we bootstrapped this out of our pockets for a year and a half, and that was a difficult road. But after we had initial traction, and that video I showed you was actually in my apartment because that was the world headquarters for a year and a half. But since then we've had pretty amazing success, and it was really around getting the first proof of concept together, and that's what helped us raise the initial capital here. And since then it's been a much easier road. Even COVID, I think, has had less of an impact than I would have thought. As you were saying at the beginning, Brian was saying about what was it, 1.3 billion raised in Massachusetts in August.
It's a really interesting environment to be in. So you're bootstrapping, you're pulling things together, you're raising more money, you're growing your team. How are you managing to do it all and stay focused, especially during COVID? Are you staffing up internally and just having that team focus and doing all of your product development work in-house? Are you working with partners? What's been your kind of pathway?
Yeah, we have a few partnerships, but we have a team of 60 people, and probably 45 of those ish are engineers, maybe even 50. It's most of our development happens in-house, happens in the office. We've been significantly working from the office whenever we can, as safely as humanly possible, socially distanced, with masks, with testing. But overall, we've actually found that COVID's had the opposite effect. It's more like it's removed everything in everybody's personal lives. And we've been pretty heavily trying to encourage people to take vacations anyway, even if they're just staycations, because I think people are working longer hours and getting more done at work than we've ever seen. So from a company perspective, I think it hasn't had a huge impact. Maybe from a morale standpoint, though, nobody's as happy now as they were last summer.
Rachel, I'd like to jump in for a question. Adam, what is your background and how did you end up being drawn to this particular part of the health tech world?
It's a really good question. So I'm a roboticist. I went to MIT. I've actually, pretty much spent my whole life in the Boston area. I worked for a year at Apple in iPhone operations. I'd say I learned so much, but also pretty quickly learned that it's not my cup of tea. I've always loved medicine, always loved medical devices, physiology in general is one of my favorite subjects. So and at the end of the day, I think Sammy, my co-founder, and I we met in undergrad. Very much set out to start a medical device company. And, our reason for that is I think there's a lot of us, probably everybody here, that's the kind of people that like to work really hard and long hours for something. And it's just a lot easier when that something has the kind of meaning that all of our work does. So it's cliche, but it's not meaningful. So
it's wonderful. And I'm so glad to see you moving from Apple to actually products that make a difference in our world. I'm just kidding. I'm
not going to say it, but I'm fine with you saying
it. Just a quick question. I saw you mentioned some really very high-profile investors and partners, Khosla Ventures, Bill Gates. How did you manage to get on their radar? Was there something that you did that perhaps elevated you to getting their attention?
Yeah, I wish for all the other entrepreneurs here there was a good simple answer to that, but there's not. Our seed investor knew one of the partners at Khosla and connected me, and then I pitched them. I met one of our other major investors. I met an associate at some sort of conference. I don't remember exactly. I mean, it's just networking. It's, boots on the ground, so to speak.
Well, great job. And that is one of the coolest little product demos I've ever seen. So
thanks.
Kudos to you guys.
I appreciate it. And the latest full system is just unbelievable. I mean, we are getting close, and it's incredible.
Before we move on, my last question: what's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
I mean, from a product standpoint,
yeah, from the product standpoint, what are you guys focused on at the moment?
At the moment, the focus is getting our Gen 1 product, finished up through the FDA process and out onto the market. I think there's also a lot of things as with every company that haven't made it into Gen 1 that we're working on as well in the background. Some of the really cool features, a lot of the AI features. But yeah, overall, pretty much everything that we're working on is either probably 80% that first generation and getting it out, and 20% some of the amazing features that are going to enable us to not just hit a few markets within general surgery, but be ubiquitous within surgery.
So cool. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and giving us the update on what you guys are working on. It's a really inspiring story. Nothing about what you said is cliche. It makes so much sense. And your journey in getting there is it's really nice to hear. So thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it very much. And thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to switch gears to our next fantastic speaker, Sarah Khalifa. We are thrilled to have Sarah on our program. She was a member of our MassMEDIC Ignite cohort last year. So Brian and the team and I got to know her and her company very well, and are just so impressed and inspired by her background and the work that they've been doing at CoreMap. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we are so excited to hear what's going on in your world.
Terrific. Thank you, Rachel. First, I have to thank Adam. That was amazing. And I'll just kind of humbly put out there, I had 10 open surgeries for cancer, and I just pay it forward to you. That's amazing. And so many people will benefit from all your hard work. And so from the patient side of the equation, thank you. And I'm speaking to you from our world headquarters. I kind of like that. So I'm in Vermont at world headquarters. And before I start in my presentation, I'll just tell you a little bit about me. So I'm an engineer by my undergraduate education, and I just graduated from law school. I went back and got a master's in med device and pharmaceutical law, and with about 40 years in between the two degrees. And I lived in the Boston area for most of my professional life. I was a 4-time chief operating officer all in Medtech. And so I had been the wing person to the CEO as they raised the money, and now have gone through first time raising money on my own. And what an experience. And that's really what I'm geared to tell you the most about. I have a short deck so you can kind of understand what we were raising money about, but it's so fresh for me as being the first time through and raising our Series A that I'd really open up to questions that anybody might have. So let me share my screen here. And okay, can you see that? Excellent, I see the nods. Okay, so I moved to Vermont to partner with an inventor, and this is our market. We're after the atrial fibrillation market. There are 33 million patients globally. In the US, we spend about $26 billion caring for patients with atrial fibrillation. Everywhere we go and anywhere I speak, somebody says, my mother, my father, my brother has AF. If you have AF, you carry a 5x increase in your risk of stroke. And so that's added on to the $26 billion that are spent in the US caring for these patients. And so my co-founder is an electrophysiologist. And this story really started 20 years ago when he said, I don't have a good option for my patients. AF is the most common and hardest to treat cardiac arrhythmia. And currently, it's really a one-size-fits-all solution. It's not personalized to the patient. There are antiarrhythmic medicines that can be given, but they work, it's estimated, maybe 50% of the time. They're expensive and they're not easy to take. And there are some therapeutic solutions that work well in other arrhythmias, not in AF. And the reason for that is AF is different from one beat to the next. And the numbers are that of the AF, we'll take the patient population in the United States, which is somewhere between 2.7 and 6 million people, and less than 1% of those are brought to the ablation lab for a very proven therapy for other arrhythmias, which is to create a lesion inside the heart that interrupts the arrhythmia. And so there's a one-size-fits-all where they attempt to isolate the pulmonary vein. But the real problem is that there's not an adequate mapping technology that can map with a high enough resolution that says, here are the drivers of AF. And so what my co-founder did is he invented the answer to that problem, and he overcame the obstacles that have stymied decades of attempts to solve this problem. And I'll quickly tell you the 4 things that created this invention. The first is he went to a micro scale of electrodes, and electrodes are what is used in the heart to sense electrical activity. So we went to a micro scale, but it wasn't enough to just be small. We went to a configuration for electrodes which actually stacked 2 electrodes on top of each other. So micro down in the diameter of a hair, 2 very thin electrodes sitting on top of each other. And when one sits on the tissue and the other sits just away from the one on the tissue, they see exactly the same thing, except the one that's farther away can't see through the one that's on the tissue. And so when you subtract those two signals, you're left with the activity right below the diameter of a hair. So that's the configuration is the second invention. The third invention is to create a grid of these. So think rows and columns. So we have 8 rows, 8 columns, 64 pairs, 128 microelectrodes. And so now with the grid, you can watch the electrical activity in this very small scale from one hair diameter to the next. And it doesn't matter what direction it's going. And we use AI to calculate velocity vectors of the electrical activity. So those are the first 3 parts of the invention. The fourth part was an obstacle that still thwarts current mapping technology, and that's that they use a term that's called local activation. Put a group of electrodes in the heart and say, when did it go by this one? And then this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then interpolate it in a single beat. What my co-founder inventor discovered is if you map the tissue properties, they don't change from one beat to the next because they're derived from the cellular activity. And so once we did that, we can now map this small area, this one, and then create that all together and find the area where the circuit core density or the electrical activity is the highest and create an ablation lesion set there. So that's the discovery at a super high level. And what it creates is a personalized approach to what's going on in your heart. So now a little bit about how we got here. And I told you that this story started 20 years ago with my co-founder saying, how do I better treat these patients that I'm seeing? And I fast forwarded to the founding of the company in 2016. So I wasn't with my co-founder when he founded it, and that can be a topic we talk about afterwards because MassMEDIC was very helpful to me in solving the challenges or the subtleties and nuances around that. So I joined in 2017 and I raised $1.25 million in convertible seed funding debt. I used that just like Adam talked about coming up with a proof of concept and finding a technology that could build what I've just described was very challenging. And it took us years. And it took us spanning the globe and looking at a lot of different fabrication methods. Then in 2019, I applied for and was accepted into the MassMEDIC Ignite cohort. And that was a big event for us because it put us on a different stage than Vermont. We actually had an event happen. We were named one of the 20 medical device startups you need to know. And that came out of MassMEDIC. The FDA read it and they contacted us. They're very interested in this space and clinical solutions. So we filed a pre-sub, an informational pre-sub, and we went to the agency and we told them what we were doing. We explained our technology. We got to know the folks in that branch of the FDA. I participated in every offering that MassMEDIC had, and they had a lot of them really geared at first-time founders. And my hats off to Rachel and to Helen and to Brian because it's a wonderful program. And all through this time, I began developing the relationships that would lead me to a serious funding event. And so I would say I've really been fundraising for 3 years. It culminated in a term sheet arriving to us in December of 2019, pre-pandemic. And ultimately, we made the decision that it wasn't the right term sheet for us. And it wasn't really about what the company was valued at. It was really about the governance of the company. And that we recognized with this term sheet that Peter and I would lose control over the company to the extent that we wanted it in the things that mattered to us. And so we parted ways and we took the other folks that we had talked to and kind of went back at it again, and we got a second term sheet. And the second term sheet came probably the last week in February. Once again, the valuations were good, and we began to negotiate it. We thought it was the term sheet that we would take. And in April, I went to our board and said, I don't support taking this funding. And now we're major into a pandemic and not much money in the bank. And my argument was that I was confident we would regret the financial partners and that we'd be better off taking the company and turning it on idle. We had kept our committed spend very low. We didn't hire people, we used contractors. And so the board agreed and we left that term sheet. And Adam said something that I think is just, to me, after this experience, probably universally true. And your success really comes from your network and your ability to network. And so I went to my network and some of my investors in my seed funding and said, we need to pivot. We've tried that twice and we need to pivot. And so we had a pivot meeting and we said, we'll go out for less money because we were trying to raise $10 million. So we said, we'll make a smaller round. We'll go out for 5 and see if we can get a different kind of investor, angel investors, family offices, that we could pull together $5 million, continue to prove out our concept. And one of the investors said, in the tech world, sometimes the big tech firms will seed an investment like this. And Sarah, do you have strategic relationships where maybe one of the strategics might do that? And if I fast forward the story, one of the strategics said yes. And as we got into the discussions, everybody around the table finally came to me and said, we don't want to put in 5, we want to put in 10.5. The strategic wanted to put in 4 versus the $100,000 I had gone to them and asked them to help me get excitement over my pivot round. And the week before last, which was a really big week for the company because we were awarded this National Science Foundation SBIR, which I might add, it was roughly the 10th time we applied between the NSF and NIH. We were approved by an IRB for our first in-human study, and we put our Series A in the bank. So I have a little slide here that this is my assessment of fundraising, that it's like an Ironman. I started saying it was like a marathon and you got to the finish and you could see it, but it kept moving. And I finally concluded it's more like an Ironman and you could see the finish. And then they say, oh, we're adding a mountain climbing event. You've gotten through the swimming and the biking and the running, and now you're going to climb the mountain. And it's really grit and persistence win. And then lastly, I have my plug once again for participating in MassMEDIC. I would say for any, particularly first-time CEOs, which is me, that participating in this program was great. It helped me gain my confidence in pitching my company. I had 0 experience in electrophysiology. I was cold to that, and it was a safe place for me to begin pitching. Great network, got the interest of the FDA as a result of the work with MassMEDIC. And so once again, I really have a lot of gratitude to them, both Peter and I do. So that's my pitch.
Sarah, that's amazing. What a great story of persistence. I really admire your grit and determination. So there are a question in here. First of all, but you know, your press release about your $10.5 million funding round went out today, right? So,
yes.
So we're kind of breaking news here. So
yeah, it's a good day for us.
Yeah, you've had a great couple of weeks. I can't. Overnight success takes many, many years. What are you going to do with the funding?
Okay, so we're going to continue our development. We've negotiated a term sheet that has milestones in it. And so we plan to submit to the FDA. Our target is 18 months. It's aggressive. We have a plan, and now we're going to turn from fundraising to executing, which I'm really looking forward to because that's my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So we're going to, we have 2 parts to our product offering. One is a single-use catheter, and this is kind of a good little story. I actually gave a little bit of equity to our contract manufacturer when we had no money. We said, we don't want to stop. How about if we give you a little equity? They liked what we were doing. They believed in us. They took some equity. So we've kept that ball rolling. And then the real place, so we'll fund that activity. The other is we're doing software development in-house. We tried the experiment 3 times, failed each one of the 3 times, more expensive and more miserable each time when we tried to outsource software development. So we're going to be hiring a software team, and I'll put my plug in there. We're really looking for some specific talent. I'd love folks to look at our website. If you know people that are talented, coding, C++, we're definitely looking to add to our team.
Right. And then you're of this new breed, I think we'll just call them pandemic CEOs.
Yeah.
What makes up a pandemic CEO in your opinion?
I'd say very similar to Adam. You have to be flexible. You have to take what's good, and you have to look at mitigations for what's challenging. I think the challenging part for us is already over, and that was all the VCs who said, we're reserving our funding for our portfolio companies. We're just not actively investing right now. And so that part is in the past for us for a little bit before I start fundraising again. But I experienced the same thing that Adam did on people, and our independent contractor base had so much more available time because there are fewer outlets for your personal time. And so people were all in, and we have people on both coasts, and they were all in on, I think this is another thing that was mentioned earlier, that we all on this call in MassMEDIC, we're doing something that's good. We have a mission that's compelling. We're going to change patients' lives, and people needed something like that in a pandemic. It makes you feel good about where you're putting your energy.
Yeah. So here's a question from the chat, and if you have a question, just feel free to throw it in here. Is the lead grid directly attached to the heart?
It can move it's inside the heart. So it goes in transfemorally and then goes inside the heart. And it's, think of it as a little grid that will move around and tap down in each spot. And then the software takes all those high frequency signals and then turns them into a map.
And then I wanted to ask you a question about being up in Burlington, Vermont. When I think of Burlington, Vermont, I think of UVM, I think of St. Michael's College, I think of the band Fish, and I think of gravy French fries. I don't think, and very cold, very, very, very cold. But, and of course, the beautiful Lake Champlain, but I don't often think about it as a high-tech hub. You're doing a lot of pioneering work up there. What's the talent like? What's the environment for startups like up there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one, I have to give a nod. One of the members of Fish is an investor in the company.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that was really a great call, Brian. I know, it's like, wow. So Burlington is changing. And so my roots are Burlington. I moved back here for this opportunity, but I grew up here and I went to UVM, and Burlington is changing. And another one of our investors who has made their identity known is a fund called the Fund at Hula. And the Fund at Hula is part of a larger organization, and they bought an old industrial oven space on Lake Champlain, and they're turning it into 140,000 square feet of co-working space. And Vermont has the lowest infection rate in the country for COVID. And you can't find an apartment, you can't find a house. And so companies are moving here, people that want to work virtually. So we have quite a few incubator, accelerator type organizations. And so I see it as a place that's on the move. It's a beautiful place to live. You've named many of the beautiful things about it. It is cold. But I do think that we're on the leading edge, and we bring a success in terms of fundraising here to Burlington. And And Peter and I both live here because we desire to live here, and we also desire to deliver a win here to Vermont.
That's wonderful. And so I think I told you earlier, I did also attend the University of Vermont. I'm hoping this clears my record there. But I can't tell you how proud we are at the Ignite cohort to have had the chance to work with you. You're very inspirational, and this story is just terrific. So Sarah, bravo to you, and thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Brian. It was a pleasure.
Rachel, you want to take it?
I was just going to props for making the right decision on those term sheets. I mean, that's a tough one, but incredibly important. It's an unimaginably tough decision. But especially given the outcome now, it was obviously the right call. So
right, and you know, I think, Adam, the way that was really good for me to think about this, and I was really well advised, anybody going through this, surround yourself with people who are experienced and critical thinkers, but are they the person you're going to trust in the foxhole when things aren't going so well? Are they the person you're going to want to celebrate with when you come to the triumphs? And if the answer is no to either one of those questions, you're better off waiting. And Peter looked at me one day and he said, you know, do we just wind it up? And I was like, no, we don't wind it up. We wait, because the right partners are out there.
That is such an, I love to hear that from both of you. I think that is something that has completely, I don't know, in the past, it's not something where startups and especially in the medtech community would have had kind of the gumption, right, and the grit to say, we're not doing this. We have power here. Our technology, what we're trying to do is important, and it is going to make a difference. We need to be not just putting our product out in the world, but doing it in a way that is going to be successful and make sure that you come out of it as a success, not just a successful product, but a successful you as well. So I think I love to hear that. And I think it's something we've been trying to make sure that every startup we talk to, and it's something the med device industry needs to promote for sure, is this is for you, this is for others. Make sure you're getting the right deal and the right partners. So kudos to you both for being that.
Typically what Sarah said about governance being incredibly important. I mean, it's your company, you're the founder. Make sure that the governance supports you, your founders, and your vision for the company. That's you know, it doesn't matter how amazing a partner your investors are, still set it up the right way.
Right. And I'll just go quickly back to that kind of point that I left along the story, and that was about the co-founder. And so I wasn't there. First, I wasn't there for the 20 years of research. And then I wasn't there in 2016 when the incorporation papers were filed. But I did bring the first money in and went out to find the partners. And so one of our first meetings with MassMEDIC was with Professor Matt Marks out of BU. And he gave us a great education on founders and co-founders. And so I reached out to him afterwards, and I said, I feel really silly asking this, but like, am I a co-founder? Like, is it right? And he says, of course it is. And so Matt and Peter and I had the discussion. And from the moment we had the discussion, I was a co-founder. And I see now how right it was, but I didn't know at the time. And so it was just another place that MassMEDIC provided some value to me in that network.
That's so great. So I think we are probably right up against, time, and want to make sure, are any last questions? Anyone? We've got 5 minutes, but we could probably do one more question. Oh, I see a hand. Josh.
Terrific. Thank you. Sarah, let me just tell you, your truth and honesty comes through in how you're presenting. And you were so right to believe in what you believe in and trusting your gut. Having been involved in discussions along the same lines of going public, getting money, trusting your gut and knowing who you're going to be getting into bed with is so vitally important, and good for you to go along and trust your gut on that one.
Oh, thank
Kudos.
you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, thanks for that, Josh. I think that is the perfect time then to say thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Adam. I love our town halls because I love inspiration and the stories that you guys are sharing. It pumps me up for the rest of the week. So thank you both so much for sharing your stories with us, and thanks to everyone for participating. We've enjoyed seeing you all, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Terrific. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great evening, everyone.
You as well.